Hey guys, welcome to the Fielder podcast. I again still don't know why they're letting me do this, and I have no business being here. My name is Becky. I'm one of the hosts, and then we got Zer.
My name is Zer. What's up?
The online pastor. So we're here to talk about Valentine's Day.
That's
so
right.
It's Valentine's Day for us. I don't know when the heck y'all are gonna be watching this. It'll probably be like I don't know. Like it could be anytime, but it's Valentine's Day for us. So we wanted to celebrate with you guys. And if y'all had a bad Valentine's Day, hopefully this will rewrite that day for you. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about love and dating and our stories, Zer and Farah, and then me and Carlos. And so, I don't know who's going to go first. And I didn't even think about what I was going to say. I was just like, I don't know. I guess I'll figure it out on the day of. But
I did too.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one that didn't prepare. Okay, so why don't you go first? I'd love to hear about you and Farah. How did that happen?
All right. Yeah. No. All right. So we're just jumping straight into
Yeah, we're
this.
just doing it. We're just going to go.
Okay. So I met Farah. The very first time I met Farah was at an In-N-Out.
You're lying.
Yes. It was after church.
That's true love.
This
right
true
there.
love, man.
That's true
This is
love.
why we love In-N-Out. It's not because the food is great, better than Whataburger. No,
Yes.
I'm about to get canceled.
And
dog.
cheaper. Let's go there too. Like,
Cheaper, healthier. You don't feel like bad afterwards, you know what I'm saying? Anyways.
no hate, but also
No hate. But
plug In-N-Out.
plug to In-N-Out. They should sponsor this video.
They
Actually, shout out to In-N-Out for sponsoring this video.
Thanks,
Be sure to click the link at the bottom of the I'm just playing.
Thumbs up this thing In-N-Out. Anyways.
Anyways.
Really get back.
Yeah. We met at an In-N-Out, but she was dating my friend. Honestly, it was like a best friend of mine.
I didn't know this.
At the time.
Wow.
And so she walks in. Actually, this was outside. We were eating outside. It was a nice day. She walks up with my friend. This is after church. And she's wearing like stunner shade glasses. And I was like, dang, she's cute. But man, hey, look, I'm a man of integrity,
Right,
man of
absolutely.
character. And I was like, she's dating my friend. I'm just not even like, I know that if I start talking to her,
Right, absolutely.
I'm about to like fall in love with this girl. So literally, I acted like I had nothing.
Ignored her.
I ignored her. I didn't want to be her friend. I didn't talk to her.
Wow.
You can ask her. She thought that I hated her. Like she thought that I just absolutely didn't like her. So long story short, they break up.
And
He
you're
moves
like,
away.
yes.
Yes, no. But then I'm smart, I'm like, I don't want to hurt my friend's feeling. So this was the spring semester. I waited all summer.
Wow.
The first time she was working at Steel City Pops at the time. It's like a popsicle shop local here in DFW. She's serving popsicles at our school for an event, and I was part of student life. Bro, I go up to her. I'm like, what's up, Farah? How are you doing? Like, I was like, acted like I was her best friend. And she was just like, who the heck is this guy? I thought he hated me. You know what I'm saying? But then, long story short, like, that was the start of how we met. And
I love that. It's funny that you said that whenever y'all first met that she thought you hated her. Me and Carlos, so like, we met actually working here at the church. So that when we met, he had the job that I hadn't, which is so funny to talk about. But yeah, when we met, I was like, so he was in Brazil when I first heard about him, and I worked in the missions department at the time. And there were two people in the missions team, Richard and Maddie, who they were like, oh my gosh, there's this guy, he's in Brazil right now, but like we would love for y'all to meet him. Now I'm coming in fresh basically as a baby believer. Like I had been a believer for like maybe a year and a half at that point when I first came on staff. And I was like not in a healthy place when it came to like relationships or like men in general. Like I had dated as an unbeliever and just like walked out of that like super traumatized and from my own mistakes and then also the mistakes and influence of others. And so I was just like not in a healthy mindset about it. I was in my I hate men phase, which is very trendy right now. But yeah, and so I was in that mental mindset. And so whenever they were saying that, I immediately was like, nah, forget this guy. I don't even want to speak to him when he gets here. And so the first time we met was actually over Teams. Like he was Teams chatting with Richard because he was like volunteering, interning basically for missions team while he was in Brazil. And I heard him and Richard talking, and I'd heard a lot about him, but I had never introduced myself. And I was brand new to the team. And so I went over there and I was like, and he was like, And Richard had the headphones in, so we wouldn't have been able to hear each other. So that was like literally our first interaction was virtual, which is so hilarious how it painted out. But then over time, like we became friends, and I am like, I don't have a super great relationship with emotions. Like I'm very like detached in that sense. And so I was knee deep in a crush for him way before I ever realized it.
Wow.
Like I didn't even think I was attracted to him like that.
Yeah.
And so whenever, and like he's an attractive guy, I just was not in that mindset. Like I thought,
Yeah, he is
so
an
like,
attractive
yeah,
guy.
he really is. And so I was not in that mindset to like think that I would ever feel any chemistry with anybody like that. And so I realized I had feelings for him like way after they were there. And so my response to that was to treat it kind of like an illness. And I was like, the only cure for this disease of having feelings for someone is to never speak to him again.
Wow.
And so I like
Dang.
completely like ignored him and was like, anyways, I'm moving on with my life. But then it was hard because we had become friends, because he became really close friends with my best friend Bethany and roommate at the time. And so us and then his roommate, Mel, like the four of us just became really, really close. And so it got harder to ignore him. And then, you know, so it's just like funny, like the lack of clarity that I gave him, because it wasn't because like I didn't think it would be a good idea to like him. It was just like I was immediately afraid. I was like, oh God, I have these feelings.
Yeah.
This can only end badly. So time to never speak to him again, which is so hilarious. Like now that we talk about it now, it's just like, dang, I probably could have been a little bit more clear.
For sure.
So yeah, that's how it started with us.
Dang.
Isn't that so funny?
That is crazy.
But it was just kind of making me think of, you know, dating in the church is a lot different than dating not in the church. And so like I remember whenever I first became a believer, I would hear all these stories about like people that were dating in the church and bad experiences that they'd had. And I was like, why are Christians overcomplicating it so much? Like that was my immediate thought, was like, why are we overcomplicating it so much? And I think that we do have the tendency to overcomplicate even the most minimal things. But I think it's supposed to be harder to date in the church, because there's like, in a certain way, like, you know, we have to walk through the, like, on a camel through the eye of a needle kind of thing, you know, like we're supposed to be walking above reproach. And so there are some added complications to that. But I think ultimately what I gained from that initial dating, or not dating, but like that initial pattern with Carlos, was just like my lack of clarity on my own emotions was affecting he and I's progression. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I was like, and I think now looking back, I'm like, I don't think if you're expecting to be 100% fully healed in your heart and in your mind before you date again, you're never going to date again. You know what I'm saying? Like that's an unhealthy expectation of health. I think we need to be pursuing health in all things, like constantly pursuing mental health, spiritual health, physical health. But if you're waiting to meet a certain standard before you get there, I think you're already idolizing your relationship, because you're already expecting yourself to be perfect when you enter into it. And that's a form of idolatry, you know? And so, and so I'm just like, you know, I think you should be pursuing health, pursue those things. If you know that there are areas of your life that you're quenching the spirit in, which I obviously was, that's not the other person's fault.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, like they're not the answer to the issues that you're facing.
Exactly.
And they're not going to be the solution either.
Exactly.
So I love that you're bringing this up, because this is kind of like the question that I had as I was thinking about this episode. I was just thinking, like, there's a lot of young Christians in the church today.
Yeah.
Maybe not young, maybe young as believers, but also younger, you know, young in age, or even older in age, you know. But like, what would you say is some of the best advice you received from other believers, maybe some friends, when it came to dating?
That's hard, because I think there's just so many pieces of key information, and I think there's two things that immediately come to mind. The first one I actually heard from a podcast episode from Levi Lusko, where he was talking about dating. He wrote an entire book on it called Swipe Right. It's really good, talking about, like, you know, purity culture and dating and all that. But it's a really good book. But one thing that he mentioned in the podcast talking about that book was just like this aspect of, if you're looking for someone to embody, like if you have a specific cookie cutter exact mindset of who that person that you're gonna, you know, spend eternity with, or like spend your life and do ministry with, like if you have a specific cookie cutter mindset, like, are you embodying that too? You know, like, I'm not gonna walk into a relationship expecting him to be, you know, 100% physically fit if I'm not also pursuing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's an unfair expectation, like that. I think we are so self-centered that we're wanting someone to come into our lives that's the epitome of what we desire, but we're not we're not doing it ourselves. Like, we're not holding ourselves to the same rubric or measurement that we're expecting other people to walk into. And so I think it's like there's a little bit of hypocrisy and pride that can sleep in, like, that can sleep into your mindset whenever you're dating. And so I think that's unhealthy. So I think you're like, you know, I want someone that's super, you know, financially stable. Are you financially stable? You know, like, because I think you're setting them up for failure because you're like expecting them to come into your life and fix it. And that's what Jesus is for, you know, like that you can't, like, that's not going to fulfill you. Like, that other person is not going to fulfill you. So that's one thing that I immediately think of. And I think the other thing is just, I mean, you can do things while being afraid. Was a really good piece of advice that my counselor gave me, because I was talking about it with her whenever me and Carlos first started dating. And when we first started dating, like, it was like there were so many uncertain things, because he was in Brazil and we weren't sure if he was gonna come back. And I was like, I don't feel called to Brazil, bro. But we just both, like, as we prayed, we just both felt like a conviction that the Lord was giving us peace over something that didn't make any sense. And so we were like, all right, like, we'll start it. And so there was like so much fear, because I was like, I feel like this is setting us up for failure. Like, I feel like this isn't going to work out. This can only end badly. Like, all of my anxious thoughts were coming in. But, you know, I felt like if the Lord is, you know, placing a conviction in your life, and this doesn't apply to just dating, just in general, like, if the Lord is placing a conviction in your life, like, you can do it with fear. You know, being bold and being fearless by faith isn't the absence of fear, is doing things by faith that the Lord will carry you through it and that he'll persevere, that he'll persevere us through it. And so I think that was also really helpful, because I think I was just so terrified when I started dating him, just because, like, I had, you know, a lot of wounds from past relationships, and dating is so exposing. Like, you know, it exposes all of your sin, all of your tendencies. Like, it's so exposing. And so I think there was a lot of fear, and there still is. And so, so I think those are my two pieces.
Yeah, no, one of the greatest things, and I agree with what you were saying right there at the end, because that was one of the biggest things in our relationships, where me and Farah both have histories with bad relationships, with me, with girls, and her with other guys. And there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of damage. And one of the very first things we said early on when we were dating was, what is love? You know, love is not just a feeling. It's not a, you know, we feel it and we can fall out of it. Like, we said to each other, like, love is a choice. And I'm choosing to love you. But also part of that love means, like you mentioned, like, it's part of it is opening myself up to the fact that you can hurt me. But I'm still going to choose to love you and choose you. You know, like, over and over and over again, we kept telling ourselves to each other, like, it doesn't matter what, you know, hurt you've experienced in your past, or even in our relationship now, as we're learning about each other, and my past could hurt you, or some things I say, how I act could hurt you, but, like, I'm still going to choose to love you despite it. And that was one of the biggest things that has helped us, like, especially when we were first dating. And I would say, like, community, man, like, dating in community, because then you get to know that person, not just how they act and interact with you, but you get to see how they interact with other people. You know, and you get to see those, like, character, the character of that person.
And you need community whenever you're dating, and because not only, like, is it also helpful for you guys to see how y'all work together, how y'all work with others, but also you need that accountability. You know, like, being in a relationship, like, there's so many areas that you can fall into, like, so many areas of sin that you can fall into, like with anything. And so having community, like having that person that will hold you accountable. And I'm not just talking about, like, sexual sin, like, I'm talking about idolatry too. Like, you know, you're like, if you and your boyfriend get into a fight and you're, like, depressed about it for the next 2 weeks, like, you know, someone in your life can call you out and be like, I think you're giving what he said more weight than what the weight that you're allowing God to speak into you is, you know. And so I think there's just, like, so many areas that dating in community is helpful. I will say it's also hard to date in community, because, and I think like, I'm going back to this
Sure.
about like the I hate men mentality. It's so trendy right now. Like, it's like, it's honestly so crazy to me how trendy it is. And when I say trendy, I'm saying like it's acceptable. Like, it's super acceptable, super common, and it's almost expected. If you're a strong, independent woman, you're expected to have that kind of mentality almost.
I don't need a man.
I don't have that, you know, like I don't need a man, I need Jesus, you know? And so it's like, I think immediately I have so many issues with that mindset. But I also think back to like Ephesians, whenever I think it's 5, talking about us walking in unity. And how can we walk in unity if you're hating half of God's creation? You know, Jesus himself was a man, you know, I know that's crazy for some people, but like, it's like, I'm not going to hate men for the damages that other men may have done to my life. Like, that's not specific to the gender itself.
Yes.
I do think that there are sins that men can fall into easier, but I also think that there's a lot of sins that women can fall to easier. And so I just have a really hard time with that. And so I know that I've seen and heard of relationships whenever breakups happen that all of the girls' friends immediately hate him and like almost immediately like blame him for whatever the breakup is. And you know, I'm not gonna lie, there are times where that is the case, but I do think that that removes the accountability from the girl, the woman, to grow in herself. You know what I'm saying?
That's good.
And I think and vice versa. I grew up with a lot of guys, and I know that there were times whenever the guys would break up with the girl and the guys just assumed that she was crazy, like, oh, she's insane, like she's too needy or whatever. And so I think like dating community can muffle the waters, and I think it's like breeding ground for division. And when I say division, I'm meaning like the enemy comes to seek, kill, and destroy. And so it's like, if you're in ministry, or if you're just wanting to reach your friends at college or in your community group, you know, I think don't speak ill of your brothers in Christ. You know, like that's immediately not setting the foundation, and that I can't stand men mentality is quenching the spirit. Like, you know, that is immediately quenching the spirit. And so I just, and so I think dating community, I want to also not just hold the guys and girls that are dating, but also their friends, you know, their friends. Like, you need to speak life, you need to speak truth, you need to be able to hold them accountable, but also don't sink into the sinkhole of gossip or division. So that's one thing that I've seen that's so interesting to me. But yeah, so back to Farrah and Carlos, our favorite subjects. So I was just curious about like how, I know that you guys, you know, met and all that, but like, how did the pursuit happen? Like, how did like you start pursuing her, or how did like y'all actually start dating?
Sure. Love songs.
Are you serious?
So I'm very extroverted,
Yeah.
and she's very introverted. And we had a large group of friends in the seminary. And my way to like get to know her wasn't direct. Like, I would write songs, and then I would like publish them online, and all my friends would see it, and then they would tell her,
Oh my
like, do you see this? Is he talking about you, or is he talking about a different girl? Like, I purposely made it ambiguous because I was just like, I really don't want her to know. I don't know. I don't know what was in me that I didn't want to tell her, but I liked her. I just expressed it through song. And so I made like one song about her. I made a second song about her. And then I was like, hey, could you do, because she does like calligraphy and art. And I was like, could you make the artwork for this song when I posted?
That's adorable. I can't.
Yeah, it was wild. I made like 4 or 5 songs about her during our college years.
Wow.
Until finally we were at like an IHOP, we were studying, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, you want to go out and study? We weren't studying, you know, we were talking the whole time. But then finally it took a while, but it was like, finally had the courage to just tell her like flat out, like, hey, I like you.
Yeah.
All these songs that I was making, they were about you. And I really would want to get to know you personally. Like, it took months.
You were easing into it.
I was easing into it. Yeah. I was hyping myself up with songs in order to get to the place that I yeah.
Well, and let's talk about that. Because I remember asking, we had this conversation, me and Carlos did, about just like because I mentioned that we were going to be doing this episode, and I talked about like how we were probably going to talk about what pursuit looks like. and I can't remember how it happened, but basically like I ended up asking like, so what are some of the difficulties of like pursuing a girl as a guy? And he was like, well, and we talked about a lot of things, but I think he was like, well, even with you, like I respect you a lot, and so there's almost an intimidation factor that I felt. But you know, again, like the Lord gave me boldness to like, you know, even if you rejected me, I was gonna be okay, and I knew that there was still like respect that we had for each other. But obviously I didn't end up protecting him. Here we are. But like just the concept of like, what's the fear aspect of like whenever you're asking out someone?
Yeah, no, I think the fear aspect more so is I just get in my head. Like, so, okay, I'll just share really quickly. The line in the song, the second one that I made, just had to do with this whole idea of like, I really enjoy the relationship that we have right now. Right?
Yes. Oh
like
my gosh.
I love the relationship that me and her had developed with our friend group. So again, tied into like, we have a whole group of friends that know that we like each other, or, you know, we're flirty with each other, but not really like dating.
Yeah.
And part of the fear was like, man, if I ask you out and you reject me, then it just becomes awkward.
Yeah.
Or if we date and then we break up,
Then it's even more awkward.
then again, it becomes more awkward. And so like part of it was just like, I'm trying to remember the lyric of the song. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's just like, it really is that in essence.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't want this, like what, if me asking you, simply just asking like, hey, would you be my girlfriend kind of thing, to ruin the relationship that I had with her. And that's where the fear was. But really it's like, again, when you really think of it as like, no, but I care for you, I love you, like I want the best for you, regardless of what she says, then that dynamics will change, but you can still have a relationship after. I just had such bad experiences with girls in the past.
I agree.
Where it's like, that was the fear. That's where the fear was coming from.
I agree. And I think it's also telling of like, you know, if I ask you out and you say no, or and then things can get awkward in community, I think that's normal. You know, like I think that's normal, that's expected. And I think like a guy asking out a girl, or even a girl asking out a guy, I don't want to put all the pressure on the guys. Like I every single guy that I'd ever had like any type of relationship with, I always made the initiative because I'm impatient. And I was like, I'm just going to do it, forget it. Carlos was really the only one. And it was only because the Lord wouldn't let me. Like the Lord was like, stop, let him do it. And I was like, anyways. But all that to say is with like whenever I don't think a guy asking out a girl immediately means that he's in love with her. He's like, I'm going to die if you don't say yes to me, you know, like, or a girl, like if she expresses interest, she's just like, hey bro, like, are you, I'm catching these vibes. Like, how do you feel about it? Like, I think an awkwardness is normal, but I don't want to put so much weight on asking someone out because it's really just, hey, I want to get to know you better. I want to see if this works. Or I want to get to know you better to see if this is something that could work. You know, it doesn't mean that he's in love with you. It doesn't mean that she's in love with you. It just means, hey, like I'm interested. Like let's talk about this. Let's see it. And no harm, no foul. Like if it doesn't work out, like I don't think there's any issue with that. But I don't think that we need, and I think that's one thing that the world does a lot better than believers because I think believers, we put so much weight on dating that whenever that process starts, it's like marriage. This is it.
Ring
like
by spring.
Yes,
you know,
the Lord has spoken this into like existence. Like this is happening, and I'm like, no, like a date is a date. Like that's not end game.
We can be mature about it.
Exactly.
We can be adults about it.
Let's be adults about it. I think that's fine. And because like honestly, I mentioned this briefly, and like we're probably gonna have to dedicate like a whole episode to like me and Carlos's journey on him coming back, because that was like a whole thing. But basically, one of the things is like I counted the cost of us dating, and I was like, Lord, like if you bring him back and we break up, I'm okay with that. You know, like I've surrendered this relationship to you. Like if we break up, I still have Christ, like I still have Jesus, like I still have purpose and fulfillment in my life outside of him. So I was like, I wasn't expecting that we were going to break up, but I was holding him loosely because, you know, we're not married. And so like, and even right now we're still not married. And, you know, and so it's just like so funny how I feel like the Lord had to bring me to that place of like complete surrender. That way, if he didn't come back and we broke up, like I would be in a place where my heart would be okay with it. So yeah, and so I think that that's one thing that is always so, because I think that the world does that a little better than believers
Sure,
do.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And I also am curious, like with, we talked about like what the guy feels about pursuing a woman. Like, I also think I want to talk to women, like allowing ourselves to be pursued.
Yeah.
Because I think like that's such a struggle for me even now. I just have a really hard time with it. And I think I've been on a journey recently where, again, like, dating and being in a relationship is so exposing in so many ways, that I feel like one thing that the Lord has truly revealed to me is I just have a really hard time accepting grace from the Lord. And so if I have a hard time accepting grace from the Lord, like it's gonna, that equates to me receiving it from others.
Yeah.
So, and when I say grace, I'm not just talking about like forgiveness or mercy. I'm also talking about just like love and affection.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that like I had a hard time with. And still, even now, I'm still growing in that. But I think it kind of goes back to like me trusting the Lord more so than Carlos. Like I trust Carlos so much, but I also trust God in him. Like I trust the Spirit in him. And so it just makes it easier for me to be pursued because I have the Holy Spirit, like so does he. And I know that. And I was talking to a friend recently who is not a believer, was in a relationship for 10 plus years, and they broke up. And now like her life, they had a house together. Like, her life is just like, so different. Yeah. And she's just kind of in like a I don't know what to do kind of mindset. And just like that concept of like, she was opening up about dating again. And I was just thinking like the whole time she was talking, I was like, I don't know, like dating without the Spirit must be like so hard, because like because again, I can lean on the Spirit. The Spirit will communicate to me. Like I trust the Spirit in him, and I know the Spirit will communicate to him. And so it's just like, there's so much, I think that we need to be wise with who we allow into our lives, but I also think like that there's room for vulnerability in the church. Sure. And if you get hurt, that's not like your fault necessarily. Like, I think I don't want to kind of get into the opening the door for bitterness or anything like that, but like I don't think you have to feel guilty about trusting someone and letting you down. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, I think that there's joy in that, that you were open and you got hurt, but that's okay. Like there's grace for healing in that too.
Yeah. I mean, so speaking on Farrah's behalf, my wife, no, I mean, one of again, we have pasts, right? And that affects what you bring to the table.
I agree. When
you guys are understanding each other and we were doing premarital counseling before premarital counseling, like just laying it out. You know what I'm saying? Like, here's all my faults. Here's all my past issues. Do you still choose me, right? Like that was essentially what we, and for me at the time, it really was just like constantly going back to the gospel, constantly going back to Jesus chose me despite my rebellion, despite my sin, despite all the mistakes I've ever made, and he still chose me, chose to love me and pursue me. And again, by the grace of God, by his Spirit in me, that's the decision I made when I told Farrah, like, I love you. I'm going to pursue you. I'm going to keep pursuing you.
I choose you.
I choose you. And it was hard, honestly, for her in the beginning, because it's just like, why, right? Like, here's my issues, it was hard for her to receive that love. But then I just honestly had to just keep reminding her, like, but God loves you this way. Yeah. It's not because of me. God loves you this way.
Yes.
And so it's just constantly pointing her back to the gospel. And just saying, this is what we have here, right? Yes. What we have here is just a reflection of how God loves us. And so,
oh my gosh. And that I got so fired up when you said that too, because I'm like, I think it's so easy. I had this conversation literally last night at the Jungle, college ministry, Tuesday night, inclusion, show up, it's fire. At the Jungle last night, where we were just talking about like dating and stuff. And one of my friends was mentioning like just this season where he feels like the Lord is asking him to, be content in his season of singleness right now. And I was like, yes. And, was single for a long time, and the Lord grew me so much in that. And I think that there's so many things that like the Lord can grow in you in your singleness. Like that's also exposing.
Yeah.
And if you're in a place where you want to be in a relationship, like surrendering that to the Lord, like making it known to him, like, God, I would love to be married, you know. That's not a sin to say that, you know. And I think it's looked down upon whenever it's something that you desire, but I think the Lord knows your heart. And if you're repressing like godly desire, like I don't think we're entitled to marriage as believers, but wanting to be married and pursue like ministry with someone else by your side, like that's not a sin, and that's a godly desire, you know. And so it's like, if wanting, like accepting that, and if you're repressing that, everyone around you is going to pay the consequences for it, you know. And so I just like surrendering that to the Lord, like honoring him in that, but also knowing that like Carlos can't fulfill me even if he tried. Like he wasn't, he cannot sustain my salvation. Like he cannot sustain my life. That wasn't the role he was meant to fill. And so I think pointing each other back to the gospel, and like, and whenever we first started dating, that was one of the things that we prayed. It was like, God, guard our hearts against idolatry. Because that's that's setting each other up to fail. Because we're not Jesus. We're not, we want to embody him. We want to emulate him. We want to be like him, but we're not perfection. And so I think pointing each other back to the gospel, it's been as vulnerable and as exposing as it's been. It's also been incredibly like refreshing for my spirit, you know, seeing the gospel and like how he pursues me, and like just seeing grace embodied in that too.
Yeah. I mean, that was honestly one of the things that I learned later on when we were engaged in premarital counseling. One of the things really was simply the triangle. You ever heard of it? Right? Where it's just like, if God is here and you guys are here, when you're focused on each other, it's always going to be distance. But when you're pointing each other back to God, like that's where the nearness and the closeness and the intimacy is. You know, it's just a reminder, really, that like that's the whole reason for this relationship. Point each other back to the Lord, you know.
Yes. And I think I also, whenever we told some like our pastors and some of the members in our community that we were dating, I remember one phrase that came up with like people that I respect and that I trust, is they were like, we know that y'all can do more, like that y'all are doing so much for the kingdom as individuals, but we know that y'all will do great things for the kingdom together. And that was so encouraging to me, because again, like marrying him is not about my happiness. It's not about my joy. It's about what we can do for the kingdom together. And so, you know, to becoming one, serving the kingdom together with that same focus. And so it's beautiful, and it's been so relieving, because I'm like, okay, I don't have to carry the burden of making this relationship work. Like what the Lord brings together, let no man separate. And so there's been unity in that. And there's like there's just a burden lifted off my shoulders that like I don't have to sustain him and he doesn't have to sustain me. We both point each other to Jesus.
Amen.
So yeah. If we keep on bird boxing, okay, pause. If we keep on bird boxing to the side, it's because we're literally filming this in the middle of the office, and so people like walk by, and so it's like I don't want y'all to think that we're like being distracting. Like no, like we're just filming this.
It's distracting for you. I'm looking at the cars over here.
I see everybody, and everybody makes eye contact. But anyways, sorry. So we apologize if that's jarring to you. If you're listening online, praise God, you don't even have to deal with this acting like that. But yeah,
hopefully our voices.
I know, we're soothing ASMR vibes. We just do like, we get Chipotle next time and just mukbang. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us with this Valentine's Day episode. Do you have any final thoughts? Final notes of encouragement?
Man, final notes of encouragement. I would say this, especially in the dating phase, like, just have fun.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it is like, there's a season where things are going to need to be serious. You're going to need to get to know each other. But if dating, when you guys are getting serious and it's going to lead to marriage and you're going to spend the rest of your lives together, like, learn to have fun with each other, in community with one another and with other people, and just like have fun with this person. You know? That's what I would say.
And I am grateful for that. That like I hate even saying it. It makes me want to like throw up saying it because it's how cheesy it is. But like I really am marrying my best friend.
Yes.
Like I could talk to him day and night for hours at a time. And I plan to, you know, that's the plan right now, to like marry him and get to grow in friendship and continue dating each other as we in marriage and as parents together. And just continuing to point each other to Jesus in that too. So like, so, okay.
That's good.
Thanks guys for joining us. I hope that you guys join us again next time where we're going to be talking about betterness. Betterness. I also, fun fact, my coping mechanism is laughter, so I'm not excited about this next one. But yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll keep on talking about ourselves in the next episode. All right, have a good time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.